With the works with the best shooter and scorer playing together, the 2016 Warriors are considered one of the greatest NBA teams of all time.
This Warriors team is discussed as maybe the best ever, okay?
But after losing to Kawhi and the Raptors in the NBA Finals, KD would make the decision to leave and join Kyrie with the Nets. But what if KD stayed with the Warriors for the rest of his career? And in 2019, the Warriors team with KD would end up destroying the entire league as usual, but while in real life, they would end up being the worst team in the league. While picking up multiple wins, things for the Warriors would just continue getting better. Wait, Klay's actually all healed now. That's actually huge for the Warriors. There would also be a lot of competition within the league, with Joel Embiid picking up an easy MVP for himself. The Warriors would end up finishing the season with 59 wins, but they wouldn't end up being the number 1 seed, falling short to both the Rockets and Lakers. And in the first round of the playoffs, the Warriors would face off the Pelicans. This would be a pretty easy series for the Warriors, beating the Pelicans 4-1, which they would move forward to playing the Nuggets in the second round. And again, with no struggle, surprisingly, the Warriors team would power through and kill the Nuggets with the Jokic on that team. Even though so far the Warriors didn't have any problems at all, they'd be going up against the number 1 seed Lakers, matching up against LeBron in the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers would be up 2-1 in this series, but KD and Curry wouldn't go out sorry, putting up a fight, tying the series up 3-3. And the Warriors would end up having home court advantage, with the crowd firing them up. KD and Curry would go on and outplay Bron and AD and end up going to the NBA Finals facing off the Celtics. Even though the duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown looked absolutely unstoppable, they also lacked NBA Finals experience, unlike KD and Curry. Warriors are up 3-1, bro. There's no way they make history and blow this once again, but to a different team. And the Celtics would end up taking Game 5 by a long shot. So this series wasn't over just yet. And in Game 6, the home crowd was just loving Steph, even giving him the MVP chance. Yeah, bro, this is a fan favorite, bro. He sinks both of his free throws. I mean, I think this is literally impossible for the Celtics to win. The Warriors will win their first championship. Let's go, Steph Curry. But keep in mind, while the Warriors are celebrating this championship, a lot of the superstars are still pretty young as of right now, while KD and Curry are only getting older, which will only make it a lot harder for them as they go on. And all of that would be in the future, as we should enjoy the present as Steph Curry would take over and win the MVP during the 2020 season. Andrew Wiggins would also go on and win 6th Man of the Year, and in all honesty, this entire Warriors team was looking amazing. So amazing that they would end up winning 55 games this season, and they would carry this momentum onto the postseason as well. And a third-year Shea would carry the Thunder to the playoffs as well, but they would have to face a prime Warriors team in the first round. And as expected, the Warriors would end up sweeping the Thunder in the first round. But in the second round, things wouldn't be as easy because the Warriors would end up facing a Kawhi and Paul George duo in Los Angeles. And this newer duo would cause the Warriors some trouble. The Clippers would end up having 3 wins on the Dubs with a chance to give the Warriors their first playoff elimination, and that's exactly what would happen in the 2020 season. But on the bright side, moving on to the 2021 season, the Warriors would pick up many role players like Jonathan Kuminga, which would only make this Warriors team a ton better. And while on the topic of the Warriors only getting better and better, they would end up finishing as the number 1 seed, winning 69 games. But there was also still young talent to look out for throughout the league, like Luka winning MVP this season. This might be like the craziest fucking stat line ever. And once again, the Warriors would fly through the playoffs and end up facing a sophomore Ja Morant in the Western Conference Finals, which I thought was very interesting. But once again, a young team with lack of playoff experience, the Grizzlies would fall short to the NBA veterans, which the Warriors would head straight to the finals 2 times in a row. And they would end up facing a former MVP, Joel Embiid. And being up 3-0, the Warriors would play at home for a chance to sweep the 76ers. And with the help of the players like Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga, they would go on and sweep Joel Embiid and the 76ers. And the Warriors were on absolute fire, winning another championship. But that would leave up in the air, how much longer are the Warriors going to be good for? And heading into 2022, a player very similar to KD would be drafted, which would make the OKC Thunder a big problem to worry about in the future. Chet Holmgren with Rookie of the Year though. The Warriors would also finish at the number 4 seed, which compared to other years would be considered a decline, which would be inevitable as other players would continue to get better within the league. But for now, we have an even bigger problem being the Denver Nuggets, because that would be who the Warriors would be facing in the second round of the playoffs. This would definitely be the craziest series yet, giving KD and Curry trouble while Jokic was probably thinking about his horses. The Nuggets would take the lead being up 3-2 and have the home court advantage in Game 6. Even though KD would continue to play his ass off, the Nuggets would still bring the Warriors to a playoff elimination. But the bad news wouldn't stop just there, and as we were caught up to the current year, another player very similar to KD would once be drafted. Sticky Vicky! This would be bad news for the Warriors because everybody else in the league were starting to become way better, and Wemby would also go on and tear up the league, winning Rookie of the Year. The Warriors on the other hand weren't doing so good as they missed the playoffs, which had the entire media wondering the same thing, as well as me. Holy shit, bro, are the Warriors washed? And as the 2024 season approached, if y'all were starting to lose hope for the Warriors, don't worry, because so was I. If the Warriors wanted to prove that they weren't washed, this would have to be the season that they do it. But teams like the Thunder and the Nuggets would still dominate the Western Conference. But they would actually make the playoffs this year, ending in the number 4 seed. And in the first round, they would sweep Luka and the Mavericks, which would be huge. But things wouldn't stay that easy for the Warriors as they would face off the Thunder in round 2. They might be cooked. And both teams would go back and forth, taking games on each other until the series was tied 3-3, meaning somebody would have to go home. This would end being in OKC, where the tension between the players would be as high as it gets. Both of these teams would go at each other with the game being very close the entire time. And with 20 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter, the score would be 121-121, and KD would pull up and shoot this shot for game. OKC has been eliminated. Heading to the Western Conference Finals, the Warriors would be facing a young and talented Kings team, which they would end up having a 3-0 lead on them. But the Kings weren't going to go down that easily, winning games 4 and 5, but in game 6, KD and Kuminga would not make this easy for the Kings to come back, as they would win game 6, which would bring them to the finals once again. And in the finals, the Warriors would have a pretty easy series against the Pacers, and they would blow them out in majority of the games that they played, which would mean the Warriors would end up winning another ring. Thinking about it, it's crazy how a team that missed the playoffs would just go and win the finals right after. That really shows that KD and Steph are not to play with. But KD and Steph would start approaching to be grandpa age, while other players like Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid are all in their primes, being 99 overall. And while the Warriors roster wouldn't change much at all this season, something else big would change this season, which would be LeBron retiring from the NBA and this new playoff bracket system. Bro, I'm so lost. What the fuck is up with this bracket? And in the first round, the Warriors would be facing a Dameless Blazer team, and they would beat them 4-2, but to cut them some slack, it's a young team. In the second round, the Warriors would also face the Thunder once again, to a series that wouldn't be much easier than the last time that they played. But the Warriors would also end up defeating the Thunder in 6 games, because of one reason being the role players. And in the semifinals, the Warriors would go on to face a prime Zion Pelicans team. And to my surprise, this Pelicans team was something serious. That would even be an understatement, because the Pelicans would go on and win the series and also win the entire NBA Finals. And in the next season, many NBA veterans like James Harden and Chris Paul would start to retire, which would make everybody wonder, how much time do KD and Steph have left in the NBA? And the younger players in the league would just continue to get even better, with Tyrese Halliburton winning MVP this season. But moving to the postseason, the Warriors would have to face the Bucks in the first round, and KD and Curry would end up sweeping Dame and Giannis, coming out being the better duo and winning the first round easily. The Warriors would once again have to face this Nuggets team, and they would continue to power through and defeat the Nuggets, not easily though, because it would take 7 games. But regardless of that, they would be facing the Jazz in the semifinals. This Jazz team would end up standing no chance to the Warriors though, as the Warriors would also sweep the Jazz and go to the finals. But with a prime Anthony Edwards, the Warriors would have another problem that they would have to face in the finals. Both teams would take turns going back and forth, winning every other game, but eventually the series would come down 3-3, and the Timberwolves would be at home and end up winning game 7, which would mean they would win the NBA Finals. And after losing the finals, Klay Thompson would end up retiring and probably working at DoorDash for the rest of his life. And with that logic, you would think the Warriors would get worse, but that would be the complete opposite of what would actually happen, as they would end up winning 62 games in the season. And in the postseason, they would absolutely fly through the playoffs, defeating the Wizards, Nuggets, and Rockets in the semifinals. And going into the finals, they would face a team that would once beat them before in the past. Even though these grandpas been killing it this entire season, would it actually be enough to beat Zion this year? And again, things would end up going to a 7-game series, and this would be the last chance that KD and Curry have to prove themselves that they're not washed. And game 7 would end at home for the Warriors, but the Pelicans would have the lead during the entire game until the last minute, where the Warriors have a slight lead and end up running off with it, winning another championship, with Steph and KD still doing their thing. And this celebration would finally come to an end, as well as KD and Curry's career, with them retiring at 40 years old. Both of these players would be inducted into the Hall of Fame, going down as some of the greatest basketball players of all time. Curry will end up winning 8 rings in his career, and KD will win 6 rings in his career. But this will raise a few questions, like who would be the next team to go on a run like this, and would there ever be a greater duo than Steph and KD to come again in the NBA? But I think the real question would be, what if LeBron James played in the G League? Well, I will have the answer for you right here in this video above.